Welcome back to Island Life Stories. Today I'm speaking with Father Ernest Fritz, a man whose life took some remarkable turns. He grew up in Cape Town, built a career in business and industry, but always felt something pulling him back to the church. Running became a part of that journey. He went on to compete in ultramarathons. Then one Saturday morning, mid-run, a stroke changed everything. Not long after, he and his wife Maureen left South Africa behind for St Helena Island, where he is now a priest. We recorded this in St Peter's Church in Sandy Bay, a beautiful setting, if not the easiest for sound, so bear with the odd echo. What Father Ernest has to say more than makes up for it. It was a real privilege to sit down and talk with him. Here's our conversation. Thank you so much for joining us on Island Life Stories in this beautiful surroundings of St Peter's Church in Sandy Bay, St Helena. I've been wanting to speak to you for ages and it's an absolute pleasure. Let's start with telling everyone a little bit about yourself and where you grew up.
Yes, thank you, Darren. It's a privilege to meet with you today, of course, and thank you for allowing me to share my story. I grew up on the Cape Flats of Cape Town, South Africa. I was born in '69 and spent most of our lives in Cape Town, growing up, especially in an area where we experienced lots of oppression and lots of, there was this whole race issue. So discrimination was big, and we grew up experiencing animosity and just division amongst people as a people. But even though we were raised in this very sort of dissected world, parents weren't able to offer us all the material things in life. But I think one of the most important things they did offer was we were raised in church. So from day one, the first thing we got to know was to lead a spiritual life. And we were members of our church throughout our childhood. Continued our journeys as young people in the church to offer our services following our parents' footsteps. And so the values there was spiritual, very spiritual, spiritually grounded humility. I had a father that was extremely humble. And I think if there was that one thing that rubbed off on us as a family, as children, we 6 siblings, of whom I am the second youngest, born 12 years after my brother before me, so it's like I'm a different generation of person, But yes, even though, we were raised to be humble people, we were raised to be respectful, and to be helpful and kind. I think those are so respect, manners, spirituality, those are the things which we were given, which I think, is what carried us to this point and what's carried me through my life. And so that's really what raised, and as I say, I was the second youngest of 6 siblings, so only 2 of us grew up together in our family home. At the time, my younger brother and myself was 5 years apart, 5 years younger than me. And our journey, continued very similarly because of humble beginnings, we were sort of, the culture was to, once you've finished schooling, you need to go out and work, you need to earn, you keep, and whatever decisions you make, you're responsible for them. And so those are the kind of values which we were raised with. Be responsible for your actions, do what you need to do, and be the person that we raised you to be.
Yeah. And would you say at that point, obviously what you're saying there, faith has always been a major part in your life from but at that point, did you have an idea that maybe it would play such a significant part now, or did you think of having a career in the church?
Never.
The career is the right word, I'm not sure.
Yes, well, vocation.
Vocation, that's the word.
never, Darren. I never imagined in my wildest dreams that I was ever going to be ordained as a priest. I did. My vocation in the church started as a lay minister. Well, I started in the choir. Maureen and I got married when I was 25. But between ages, I would say 16 and 28, mid to late 20s, I separated my life from church, ended up in the secular world, and got lost to life. Chose my own path and decided, oh, well, this is it. I'm going on my own journey. I need to be my own person and identify with what I think was good at the time, but it was destructive. Made some destructive decisions, and until the time that I had met Maureen, we were then able to start putting the pieces back together. Through the grace of God, of course, again, prayer, support from family, church members who never ever lost sight of my journey. People continue to pray, people continue to support me, and through that carried me to this point. I think the essence of life is that, for me, I believe that when God appoints you, He will anoint you, and it doesn't matter when He appoints you, because it could have been in those early stages of life. And only later on do you see the fruition of where you were shaped and molded. And I journeyed through life. I was in the secular world. I had fortunately, went into the business world, spent lots of years growing business. I ended up in business development, and manufacturing industry was where I ended up in. Industries which I was exposed to, but fortunately we were able to survive and live off what I did. But alongside that, as I said at one point, where life felt like the wheels were falling off at one time, it was 9 years into our marriage, so that could be in mid-30s. I felt like this was it. I was crumbling. Life started taking its toll on me. I had enough freedom, I had enough space to do what I wanted to do with, I had enough funds to do what I wanted to do with, and I was comfortable. But yet, we weren't happy. We were bobbing heads. We were just going on a journey, spiraling downward and moving further and further apart. And it was at that point where I think it was pivotal, between 35 and 40s, which it's about almost 17, 18 years ago, that I rediscovered God's purpose for my life. I went back in and started being a regular attendant in church. I joined the church that Maureen and I got married in 32 years ago. And that's where God again started nudging, pushing through the membership of the church. I was encouraged to join the choir, and they said, come on, join us, I ended up doing a course which was called the Alpha course, which is a course started by Nikki and Pippa Gumble, which are UK-based preachers. And it was amazing. It just gave me that renewal, revitalized my spirituality and my relationship with God. And that is where I started renewing and re-offering and sort of giving myself back to God, if I could find a better word, entering back into the fold of God's family, God's church, and becoming an integral part of it, giving my life back to it. So that's kind of where that journey started, my sort of church.
Did you feel that at that time then that the realization of maybe a lack of spirituality at that point was the cause of the way you were feeling heading at that time?
Definitely. I can safely say that the more I entered into the secular world, the more I partook of everything that the secular world has to offer. That includes, all the pleasures, all the fun, all the lose, and we can sort of overindulging, and all these things. As much as we try and seek pleasure in the physical world, or the world out there, it's temporary. And I discovered that it's temporary. And the more we seek, the more we push, the more we discover that it's destroying the soul. And I found that soul destroying. And I found myself at a point where I was running. I was running, looking for breakthrough, for some sort of thing to happen, but there was nothing happening.
Yeah.
I searched and ran, and literally one night I was out with friends, and we left, Maureen wasn't home, and we went on a boys' little excursion, went out for, went to a pub and we enjoyed ourselves, and I sat in that environment where there was music and drinking, and I felt lost. I felt that there was more to life than this. I needed something more than this.
Yeah.
And I got up. And I think, I can't remember how far from home we were, but I got up and I just started walking. And running. It was in the middle of the night, in the heart of Cape Town. Not the most sane thing to do.
No.
But I ended up getting home safely, thank God. And these were the moments where I was really sort of in the dark, really seeking. And as I continued to seek through certain relationships which I formed, with people that I was able to be counseled by, I was able to realize that the one question I was asked was, are you being the person that God expects you to be? Because your most sort of sacred relationship starts failing at that point, and that was our marriage. And that was where, it attacks the most significant relationship that you have, when the chips are down. And that's where somebody, my spiritual counselor, said to me, a friend of mine, but he chose to counsel me. And he asked me one question. He said, are you being the husband that God expects you to be? And I had to look at that and say, well, and the second person that I spoke to and confided in said to me, would you want to be married to you? And I needed to think about that and really say to myself, well, this is where you need to start looking.
Yeah.
You need to start looking.
Cause and reflection and looking inward rather than...
Really start looking and digging deep. Yeah. And that's where the journey started. I think that's where my spiritual sort of journey started, and I ended up immersing myself. You're just becoming a regular attendant to church and just being fed off the word, being a regular.
Were you still in industry and manufacturing at that point as well?
Yes, so I slowly started weaning myself off the worldly pleasures. I stopped going out with friends to have a drink at the pub. I eventually actually stopped drinking, and I stopped doing lots of things which were drawing me away from God. And I said to God, look, if you are able to just give me the strength to do this, I will dedicate part of my life, to that I've destroyed in the process in the last few years back to you in some way. And funny enough, at what age it was, between 35 and 40, somewhere along there, I started running.
Okay.
Yeah, I started doing marathon running. I started off with 5Ks, and then I ended up running ultramarathons. Wow. I ran 2 ocean ultramarathons, and it was just amazing. I was just life. That's how life went 360.
Yeah.
There was this U-turn. From where I was going, I said, hang on, I need to change. This needs to change, and it changed. Again, I was given the strength to run, I was given the strength to achieve, and just with that came lots of other mental strength and
Yeah.
lots of spiritual strength and lots of tenacity, lots of, just positive energies that flowed with that. And during that time, as I said, I started in the choir for 2 years, joined the church council for a couple of years, and I was called into lay ministry while I was working. So I said, sure, I said, well, I'm not the right guy to do this. If you don't know me, I said to the vicar at the time, well, in South Africa, it's called the rector. And Maureen and I prayed, and she said, listen, Ernest, you need to tell him what type of person you are. I said, yeah, no, we have to be honest. I mean, we can't, And I went up to him and I said, Father John, I personally don't think I'm the right guy for this. And he said, you know what, Ernest, don't worry about it. He said, God doesn't choose the equipped. He said he equips those he chooses. And he says, you only get that privilege once in a lifetime, so it's up to you to choose. And that gave me the courage to start this journey. And I went into the lay ministry. I was licensed as a lay minister. I started serving the cup at the altar. I was licensed to see, I got trained to visit, the sick, do ministry to the homebound, to the sick, and, just partake in training young people for confirmation and baptism training and that sort of thing. So that's how that journey then progressed. And while that continued in South Africa for those 14 years, I could say, up till the age of 47, because I'm 57 now, but it's 48. So at 48, and that's where we get to this point, right? So we're traveling and we're journeying, and life starts throwing us. Life doesn't go smooth all the time.
No.
As you know.
No.
And so it starts throwing a bit of curveballs at us again, and I'm in business development, having to travel all around the provinces of Southern Africa into Namibia and looking after the sub-Saharan area of to introduce and looking after clients. And I'm traveling a lot and spending 3 weeks away from home, then I'm back in Maureen's alone, and life is not conducive in it, and the pressures became tough for somebody that's just a normal guy trying to make life happen, and you're being pushed. In industry, you're being pushed.
You are, yeah.
And I was doing a training run one Saturday morning. I'm trying to think, it was 2018. That's right. 2017, 2018. I was doing a training run, and it's 6:30 in the morning, Saturday morning, and I'm going out on 5Ks out. And as I get to the 5K mark, where I'm just about to turn right, come back home, I have this huge blackout. And I'm literally standing there, and I can feel myself going. I'm gone. And I feel my body sort of just elevate, descending to the ground, and I'm saying, God, please don't let this happen to me. Don't let me fall and hurt myself or break anything, because I pleaded at that moment. I said, God, please just hold me. Fortunately, I blacked out completely. My arm was and my left side was like 2 pieces of lead. I couldn't, it felt as though my arm was going to swing off my body. When I had, eventually come to, I didn't fall, thank God. And I needed to stamp my foot, just instinct.
Yeah.
Said, listen, bang your foot, hold your arm so it doesn't pull out the socket, and just do things that logically your mind is saying. So my mind, thank God, was still able to process what was happening.
So you were still on your own at that time, nobody from
Nobody, I was alone.
Do you know how long you were out for? Or?
It seemed, I don't know. It could have been, I don't know, but things were, my brain was processing and saying, okay, what do I do now? How should I go about this? How am I going to And the next 5Ks back home was literally dragging my foot, getting home. I got home. And I think in hindsight, thank God it happened that way, because I was able to remobilize myself in the process. Yes, I had to, we got home, I said to Maureen, something's happened. I'm not sure exactly what it is, but let me just rinse myself off, just watch me. We jumped in the shower, we went off to the medical center, and they immediately put me into, I was in hospital for 7 days.
Right.
And they had started doing, and they found that there were lesions on the back of the brain, and there was a mild stroke, and there was just all these things that happened in such a short space of time, so fast, so quickly. And even though that had happened to me, the Monday, that was the Saturday, the Monday morning, my GM was at my bedside looking for information as to what we had to do so that they could continue. People were flown in to get the job. And I think that made me realize that, this is what life's about. This is how you're valued in the world.
Yes.
You're just there for what you can give, and up to that point, that's it.
Yeah, you're just a number.
You're just a number.
Basically, it's a bit cold, isn't it? But it's right. I think the older you get, and the longer you're in that industry, it is very,
you realize,
very correct.
And I thought, well, this is it. And Maureen realized the same, and she was concerned, of course. And she said, Ernest, you can't do this any longer. And I said, well, this is life.
Yeah.
We have to do it. And this is where the process started for coming here. She decided, well, because of her ancestry and her dad being being born on St Helena Island in Napoleon Street, she decided, for some unknown reason, she started investigating, because she had already had a British passport since the 80s, and she decided she was going to explore St Helena Island and her status and all those things, whether she was eligible to receive status as a saint.
Right.
And she did that. And in the October of 2018, it's 2018, she came to me and she said, Ernest, I've got my status, let's go. I said, you're crazy. I said, can't be. How are we going to do this? Come on. And Darren, I started reflecting on life. We said, okay, listen, let's do a SWOT analysis. And we did a SWOT. And we looked at life.
Yeah.
And we said, and we compared the two. And we said, hang on, what have we got to lose?
Yeah. Yeah.
And we took every single memory that we literally had, our home, our first home that we had purchased, our life, the cars we had, we had vehicles, we had stuff, we had a life, man, which we built around us, and a little existence that we had formed, which belonged to us. And we said, well, let us just back up and do this. Well, I said to her, okay, what about this before we do it? I said, we can't do it though, because if we do, we can't live off what we have. So I need to be able to sustain us at least.
Yeah.
And then I did 3 applications. One ended up on Ascension Island. It was some NAFI, I think it was a military base.
Okay.
And the other two ended up here. And the manager of SHAPE then contacted me and said, listen, I found your CV on my desk. But listen to this, the crazy part was that my cousin's daughter had come here for 7 years, and she was the manager for SHAPE. And she said, Ernest, you're not going to believe this, I've got your CV. I said, yeah, well, I did apply. She said, unfortunately, you know that I can't be involved in this whole process. We had an online interview, and they asked me to start in December. I said, no, we can't. We can't leave here in December, but, give me some time. Switched with the interview. I went to Maureen. I said, listen, guess what? I've got a job on St Helena Island. It'll be enough to sustain us. There's a place to rent. We've got everything. What do we do? October, November, December. I needed to leave in Jan. I started on the 29th of, I started in Jan 2019. I arrived here.
Right.
We put the house, we prayed about it, let's just put it in God's hands, and we release this to God. If this is where God has his plan to go, then you go.
Yeah.
Prayed about it, Darren, and we put the house on the market. The house was sold at a good price. We were able to get rid of all, our debt, and we were able to then take some of the funds and we were able to invest it and keep it as a little nest egg just in case whatever happens. But we decided that we'll go for a year or two. I said goodbye to my life in SA, the industry I was in for about 14 years, and it was a bit sad, but that was it. We were free. When I got on the plane and I traveled to this island, I felt a sense of peace, a sense of freedom, a sense of just, it's hard to explain when you are able to release yourself from the bondage of a life that just keeps on churning.
Yeah.
And we just going to a place of simplicity. Yeah. And I was happy to come to a place of simplicity, unknown, but not fear. I wasn't fearful. I trusted that where God is leading us, He would take us, He would take care of us.
Yeah.
And the first thing I did, of course, when we arrived here, things went okay. The work was interesting. I enjoyed working with and the nice part is that the people whom I encountered through SHAPE were people that were disabled, people that were challenged both mentally and physically, and it was the most beautiful people to work with, most meaningful relationships that I would ever encounter, as opposed to meeting with, GM, CEOs, and whatever in secular industries. So this really, helped me to rediscern, connection with people and what it meant.
Yeah.
So I was able to do that. And in the process of coming here, I also had to break ties with my ministry, which I was very passionate, of course, as you know, about the ministry. And I was able to then come, and I had already emailed the bishop or asked somebody to say, listen, I'm going to St Helena. Would it be okay for me to join just that on the minister? And it took a while, a few months before he responded, but then I started attending St Paul's Church because we were living in Pentecost, and I walked up to the church and they started noticing me, and I said, listen, see who I am. And he said, well, get your paperwork from your bishops over there and your vicars, electors from South Africa, and any letters of recommendation from the church so that I know that you are who you say you are. And thankfully I was asked to, or given the privilege to continue my own ministry here. And it was a year into the land ministry that Bishop Dale, I think in the time was of course discerning process which I had gone through in South Africa before to be discerned into holy orders, but because we had instead transpired. And that year, it was the end of 2019, going into 2020, we were called into discerning, the discerning process of becoming deacons.
Okay. Yeah.
And I spent time in prayer again with Maureen, and we sat and I think at that point, you remember the first occasion I said to Father John, I said, hang on, not the wrong guy.
Yeah.
I think at that point I was able to discern and say, well, Father, God, this is you appointing, because I think you asked the question earlier, did I ever desire or imagine that I would end up in this vocation? No, I never, and entering here and arriving on St Helena, just wanting to fulfill a ministry as a lay minister, I just wanted to continue working, availing myself to God's people in church. There's no desire to be a priest or to become a deacon, to be ordained. But at that point, I think that from 2019 onward, I have become more trusting of God's providence. I've become more, God's faithfulness was just more relevant or more prevalent in life, and we could see.
Looking back then, would you say that at that point the period you had in industry and the sort of lows that came with that was obviously part of the journey, and possibly this wouldn't have panned out the way it has now if you hadn't gone through that?
Exactly. I think those are the parts of our lives that shape us most. Those are the parts of our lives that impact us most. Even though we were comfortable, there were moments where I was able to see the vicious cycle of life in the secular world, especially in industry, and when dealing at a level where you're dealing with both guys on the ground in production, and you're dealing with guys that are, responsible for the lives of these people. You see sad part, that this is just you just chunk of meat, I think you said.
Yeah, just a number.
You just as much as we can get out of you, that's what we want from you.
Yes.
And looking at that, and also just looking at the cycle of, you just felt like a hamster on a wheel.
Yeah.
This is like, we're going from 2014 to 2015, and it seems like we're just going to go through the same motion 2016, and we're going through, and then, you kind of wonder to yourself, where is this all going?
Yeah.
Where is this all going? Is this God's purpose for your life, or is this your decision that you've chosen to be part of this journey and you're just carrying on? And then, you realize, this just...
It brings you to that point where, like you said, yourself and Maureen in Cape Town, having to make that decision, and the power of knowing, I think, whether it's consciously or subconsciously, that change has to happen. And you cannot carry on the way, even though probably your brain is saying, well, I can't do a perfectly good job, and we're making it again. This is always going to override it. This was always going to be a destiny, that I suppose,
definitely.
This path. Definitely.
I would never, and if anybody would say to me today, I'm at this point in my life where I have this decision where I need to release myself from the bondage of the world and my situation that I'm in, of course within limits, within responsible limits of being able to do that. It doesn't affect anybody's life negatively, it doesn't affect your responsibilities negatively. I would say do it. Yeah. I would say it's you're only better for the change. And I'm not saying that these decisions come easily or they come. I don't want to make it sound as if we ended up on this uncomfortable situation and life is good. Of course not. It does come with its challenges. I think I'll share with you, and I should, but anyway, look at this, it's true. I ended up, I earned £500 a month at Shape, because it's an NGO, and I was giving back to society and working with people. that couldn't fend for themselves. So giving back in that was just
hugely rewarding. Yeah.
But the challenge was to pay £300 a month on rental and buy food.
Yeah.
And survive. Ask me today how we did it.
Yeah.
I don't know. But
You find a way.
we survived.
You find a way.
So Maureen got there, because I was here for, she had to wrap up everything in SA, sold out and do all the things, get rid of everything. And she was here for not even a month, and she was blessed with a job in the day at Emporium, and she started earning some money. So we were able to, there was just all of a sudden, because I ended up working 2 jobs, just doing the extra part-time work beside shape, just to make ends meet.
Yeah.
But not to the detriment of myself.
No.
I think for the betterment of myself.
Yeah.
It humbles you. It humbles you. And you realize that honest work and just doing things to live, a simple life, means more than to grind to the bone, to keep the other car, or add on this piece of property to the house, or buy this, or we were just living. That's all we were doing.
Yeah.
There was nothing attached to anything. It was just making sure that we could survive.
This is probably one of the best places you could do it, isn't it? This island. It's
one of the most simplistic places. And when I arrived here first in 2019, and I go from the airport to Guinea grass, I looked at I'm not sure if you noticed, but there were each little piece of land, you'd find a gate.
Yes.
Just standing there, doing nothing in some cases.
Yes.
And I looked at things and I was so fascinated, and it still feels like St Helena has just stood still in time.
Yes.
We became used to so many things like fast food, takeaways, all those things, but the simple way of life is just so much more valuable than having McDonald's or Burger King, those things, and the instant gratification. Everything's like happens so fast. So you want it, okay, we can get it. You want this, you want money, you want everything. Here, what you have is what you need.
Yes. You feel like you're being sort of stripped back, but in a really good way. It's like you said, the act of going into town, it seems to be lost now, isn't it? Just go into town, get some groceries, do your business, your daily business, you meet the people.
Yeah.
It's just wonderful. And it's lost in modern society, in most places.
In most places, we race past each other.
Yeah.
And you notice, as you say, people are married. When you drive past, there's an acknowledgement, you're still there.
Yeah.
Whereas in the cities that we go from, as fast as possible. Even our own families, sadly, have lost we've lost the value in relationship to each other. There's this hardship in trying to just be family, to be connected. So I think definitely being on an island that has been isolated, that is not now, of course, that has had much exposure to technology and social media, but I think the ethos, the basis of who people are still remains the same.
And a very strong faith.
Yes.
On the island, throughout the island.
Yes. Very committed. Very, I think, faithful to church.
Yes.
And there's a traditional thing about that, which I think in most cases we find that people are traditionally church because of colonialism and how the church was extended into the world by those who introducing Christianity to the African continent and to kingdoms, as opposed to where we growing spiritually.
Yes. Yeah.
But yeah, like you said, there's a very island life people who are very sort of traditional.
Yes.
Really traditional, in how we do things. And I often get that challenge, hang on, you shouldn't be doing this in front of the, this is a sacred ground, this is the sanctuary, you can't just go and do this, And so we do treat it with reverence and respect, of course, but sometimes we need to understand the greater spirituality is here.
Yes.
Yeah, it's within ourselves, and I guess we can't really see goodness and that mercy. So yeah, no, it's been a huge shift.
Yeah.
And yes, of course, being human, we do pull. There's this pull to this life that I think we are a very unappreciative. Man doesn't appreciate what they have. I don't know, they've lost it. And I think that is the key to enjoying the moment, enjoying where you are in this part of your journey, because I believe that this is where God has intended for us to be at this point in our journey.
If you had a message for everyone at this point, given that you've said it all your life, what would that message be?
I think the essence of for me would be, if you have the opportunity to do the right thing today, do it. Yeah. Don't wait. We often, we want to hold back for some reason, waiting, hoping for that time's not right. It's not the right time to do this just yet, but I think we need to realize that often as we believe that we have tomorrow, we don't. I think God said to this very rich man one day, he said, a man said, what do I do? And he asked me, he said, I've got this, my brains just, you blessed me with so much, what am I going to do with it? He said, I'm going to have to build another barn and fill the other barns because this one's too small. And he said, well, it's okay to do that, but who says you're going to be alive tomorrow to actually see this? So I think that is the essence of life. We don't know when or how life. We don't have the key. We don't have the key to the future. As much as we believe that we're in control, I believe that God intends greater things, and He has a greater purpose when we are able to release ourselves into the trust of where He wants us to be. So trust God fully with the decisions that we discern through prayer, through Scripture. Take your time carefully in making these decisions in life, but make them. Make those decisions, because you've only got today. That is what I would like to say. We've only got today.
Well, that's going to resonate. Thank you. Yeah. Thank you, Father, for this. We appreciate your time.
Thank you, Darren. Thank you so much. It's a privilege to be able to have this opportunity. It's really great that one gets this opportunity.
No problem. Thank you. It's an absolute pleasure.
That was Father Ernest Fritz. His message, that you never know if you'll be here tomorrow, so don't wait to do the right thing today, is one worth sitting with. Apologies again for the sound on this one. Church walls make a lovely set-in, but tricky audio. Hopefully the story made up for it. Thanks for listening to Island Life Stories. If it moved you, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and I'll catch you next time.